I've done a video on leveraged ETFs. Now this is the video on hedged ETFs. Are they a good thing for your portfolio? So for anyone that's watched the leveraged video, it's still up on the channel, and the answer was a flat no, that leveraged ETFs, these for beginner investors, are a big no-no, and I wouldn't advise them to practically anyone. But it is important to say this is not investment advice. Do your own research. The hedged question is a lot more nuanced, and there is a lot less of a clear yes or no. It's more of a maybe, but what I want to do is explain what they are, how they work, and why you may think that they are useful. This is a follow-on video. I did a video on why ETFs may not track the underlying index perfectly, and this is a video that follows naturally from that. So if you've not watched that video, that's a good watch as well in this overall discussion. So on screen, what I've got up is VUAG, which is the blue line, which is the most common, the most widely used the S&P 500 ETF in the world, and below is iShares. It's IGUS is the ticker symbol, and it is a GBP hedged S&P 500 tracker. The blue is a GBP item as well, but it is not hedged. And the way that hedged contracts work is that the ETF, or whoever manages the ETF, e.g. Vanguard or iShares, uses forward contracts to hedge the risk between the currency that the ETF is in and the underlying currency. So in this case, it's GBP, and which is what I'm buying it in. I'm buying it in GBP, so I don't have to pay trading 212 a 0.15% exchange fee. And the S&P 500, as US domiciled, is a USD index. So what I'm doing is, or what the IGUS allows you to do, is hedge between GBP and USD foreign exchange risk. You can see the impact of this here. So this is a 6-month chart. They both start at 0%. We can see over the end of the calendar year, so December to January period, that the Vanguard, which is the US unhedged ETF, is way ahead quite significantly on percentage terms over the IGUS. And then that's contracted a lot recently, and they're basically at parity now over the 6-month period, which is an interesting thing, and there are a lot of reasons for this. The most important thing is if we look at this and then we look at this chart. So this is the USD to GBP exchange over a 1-year period. But if we look at it, 14th of January, this is when the USD is most expensive in comparison to GBP, 0.82. And then it's declined significantly recently, and part of that's due to, well, most of that is probably due to Trump's tariffs. And we see that peak here coincides with this peak roughly here, where the gap is the largest between the GBP and the USD ETFs. And the reason why that contracts at the end, as we get towards April, is because over the last 6 months has shrunk the difference. So if we go back 6 months to say roughly November, we're very close in terms of exchange rates, whereas at some points in time we were quite far apart. So that is an important thing to realize between them, and that's why people use hedged ETFs, is to reduce the volatility. One's not necessarily better than the other, and one may not necessarily earn you more returns than the other. It is a way of reducing currency risk, FX risk. If you think about it, the way that foreign currency works is it could either work in your favor or against you. So the hedged asset, the hedged ETF, won't necessarily be better or worse for you. It won't necessarily, in all circumstances, gain you more or cost you more, or gain you less. It really depends on the way that the currencies move with each other. One thing that is important though to realize with hedged ETFs, and if I go back into Trading 212, we'll see this generally anyway, is that hedged ETFs have a higher exchange, or have a higher annual fee than non-hedged, because the hedged versions have to, the people that manage it and administer it have to hold and execute hedging contracts to minimize the risk, and that is a relatively complicated process, and it is an additional process. So for VUAG, we see an expense ratio of 0.07. And then if I go and get up IGUS, we'll see that it is higher at 0.2, which is over twice the fee. And while it's still a low fee, if you compound that out, it can really add up. For this reason, for both reasons, that the expense ratio is higher and that currency may work in your favor or not in your favor, people tend to use non-hedged ETFs, or at least people for investing purposes do. If you are trading, short-term trading, hedged may be better because it means that there's one less variable. But if you're doing long-term investing, people do tend to use non-hedged to save from the compounding of the fees. And I think the important thing is that the currency swings do tend to even out over time for major currencies. So USD, GBP, if we look over the last 5 years, we are seeing 3% roughly down now. But if you look at the average across this, it has been relatively close to the 0.8. So if you're using major currencies, there may not be a reason to hedge necessarily. Whereas if you're swing trading or doing more short-term trading, sometimes the currency differences are less likely to even out over time, similar to the way I guess that DCA works in principle, and you may want to, or you're more likely to want to hedge against those additional risks. So overall, as I said at the start of the video, there is not a simple yes or no to using hedge. It really depends on your own circumstances, but it is important to know why they exist, know when to use them, and to know what the pros and cons are, and that's what's been covered in this video. And I think generally this is also a very useful educational video to tell people, or to highlight to people, that most ETFs aren't hedged and that there are certain risks and impacts that most things not being hedged has on your portfolio that I think a lot of people, and especially beginner investors, don't realize. But anyway, I hope you've all enjoyed this video. If you want to see any new videos on the channel or anything, please subscribe. And if you have any comments or suggestions, put them in the comments box below. All likes and everything and shares are really appreciated. But anyway, it's been Harry from HTL Finance. I'll see you next time.